basically if they finish a first part of their course or let's say a diploma and moving on to a degree. So if there's a gap, does that necessarily mean that they breach that, and then what happens practically?
I think if the gap is larger than
2 months?
6 weeks, is it? Or 2 months, immigration expects you to go home.
Yes.
I see.
And then apply again. If the
Well,
gap's
what
too
happens
large.
if they don't do it? If the gap is, let's say, 3 months, 2.5 months, and as Michael said, the immigration expects you to go home, which is a bit unrealistic, not practical in my opinion. But what if a students continue to stay?
Well, if you continue to stay in Australia and breach of your visa conditions, you can be up for cancellation. That's one of the reasons where the department can cancel your visa. So you must strictly abide by the conditions. Well, you could go to the department and ask them, or you could apply for a deferment. You know, if your course is not in session at that time and it's going to be deferred, you can apply for a leave of absence. But technically, the department would expect you to leave the country when the course is not in session.
Yes, if the course is starting in 2.5 months' time, and we know the policy of the department is roughly, policy is not law,
Yes.
but policy is 2 months. If you go to the department, and say, look, it's impractical for me to go back and come back and to prepare for my studies, will they give leeway? Is there any?
Well, I'm sure they could exercise their discretion.
Because they're the people who will
be deciding to take action
Yes.
to cancel the visa, unless the education provider reports you. If
Right.
the education provider reports you for breaching your visa condition, then you have a problem. But if you've got the education provider on site as well, and there is absolutely no way where you can, you're just staying in Australia, and if it's going to cost you a lot of money to go back, I'm sure that the department would take that into consideration, because there is an element of discretion in cancellation.
Right.
And I think education providers are pretty clever that way. So they design their courses to line up with each course. So if there is a 5-week gap, they will have some kind of transition program that will help the student get from A to B without having that 6-week or 8-week gap for this to happen.
Right.
Yes,
right.
the danger is when you're changing institutions,
Yes.
Yes.
usually.
they
That's when
not
the
line
gaps
up.
occur. And you run actually 2 hurdles there. I've had a number of clients who I've saved them from immediate cancellation, but when it came to renewing their student visa at the end of the academic year, there's a condition applying to temporary visas, particularly student visas. You must prove that you've substantially complied with the conditions of your previous visa. So I've saved clients from cancellation only to find that when they apply for a new visa onshore, they have this substantial compliance condition built into the criteria for that visa, and they fail that and they're refused another visa. So there are several aspects, dangerous aspects, if you're going to change your education provider, and you really need to get advice at that stage, because I have a lot of clients I see at the end of the process, and it's very hard to dig a client out at the end of the process. There are some danger areas, and that's one of them. If you change your education provider, you should get some advice.
That raises some practical issues and concerns, isn't it? An international student might come here and then decide, actually, no, I don't want to be an accountant, I like to be a cook or a hairdresser. And they, of course, want to change their course. And that's where they might get into trouble. Give us some examples and how they could get themselves not into trouble and avoid getting into trouble. For example, okay, let's say I came here to study accounting. Now I've decided otherwise. What are the restrictions? What are the conditions? How can they move on?
Student visas have a condition 8516. Now this condition is based on the assessment levels, which is based on a legislative instrument.
What does that condition say?
The condition says that you can't change your provider. If you come in to study a particular course, especially the package courses, a lot of students come in to do a diploma leading on to a degree. But what happens after they finish their diploma? They feel, I don't want to do the degree,
Yes.
and do another diploma.
Yes.
Now that's a breach of 8516.
I see.
What they're required to do is apply for a new student visa. A lot of students don't
Right.
know that.
Right.
And then they get into a lot of trouble. The
Right.
department can cancel for a breach of 8516.
Because that is because when they come on a package visa,
yes.
they have a higher degree, which in the department's terms there is subclass 573. But
Yes.
when they change and when they continue to study at a different level, it's considered, let's say if it's diploma, the subclass that the department would be giving you is 572. So if you don't apply for a 572 visa subclass, and if you continue to study on the visa that you came but not studying your degree, you'll get into trouble.
Yes, and the rationale behind that is the assessment level for a 573 is a higher assessment level.
I
So the
see.
student is, given the visa easier overseas. So when they come here, if they do not change that, they do not make an application for a new visa, the department is sort of monitors students who do that, and
Right.
that's a ground for cancellation as
Right.
well.
Well,
One of the
we-
big problems recently has been after the introduction of streamlined processing for the Ivy League universities, where you don't have to go through the usual processing of proving how much money is in the bank for the parents and the grandparents, and it has to have been in the bank for the last 3 months, or you have to arrange for an education loan. The streamlined processing allows you to go straight through merely on an assertion that you've got the funds to study in Australia. And education agents often overseas are telling students that they can change their course once they arrive. But
That's of course
condition 85,
misinformation.
Yes.
yes, condition 8516, you must maintain eligibility. If you drop down from the degree course to a diploma, the department is routinely cancelling the visa. So if you're thinking of changing courses, get some advice before you do it.
And also, I understand that the student advisors overseas, they shouldn't be providing immigration law advice to students.
Exactly.
And most advisors overseas, even immigration advisors, are not immigration agents registered in Australia. So there's no real authority. Am I correct? Does that mean that students can get incorrect information whilst they're before coming to study to Australia?
Well, most students don't know the difference between an education agent, a migration agent, a lawyer, or an accredited specialist.